4 players were specifically mentioned by Josh Heupel after Tennessee's final scrimmage, and they were Peyton Lewis, Dont'e Thornton, Squirrel White, and I'm forgetting one. Help me.
Deshaun Bishop.
We talked about Bishop earlier. We think he's going to be the second string tailback for better or for worse. I don't think that it's any great surprise that with the who is the third? I'm sorry. We've got Dont'e Thornton and specifically want to dive into Peyton Lewis.
Lewis, Dont'e Thornton, Squirrel White, and Deshaun Bishop. Also talked about Chris Brazzell a lot. He's talked about 5 because Chris Brazzell too.
Why don't you just reset it up? I tell you what, I did a terrible job of that. Stumbled all over it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Josh Heupel has mentioned Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop, Chris Brazzell has stood out in spring ball, Squirrel White, and Dont'e Thornton are guys that have stood out consistently while Josh Heupel's been talking as Tennessee's halfway through practices through fall camp.
So the question I want to ask you is, among those 4 players, what players that Josh Heupel has cited will have the biggest impact out of that group? One's obvious, right? Squirrel White.
Yes, okay. Exactly.
Let's take him out, okay? Because he's going to have a major impact. So what players...
Let's throw Bishop out because we've already talked about Bishop too. So let's just compare Lewis and Thornton and Brazzell if you want to.
Okay. I think Brazzell's more of a given than you. So I'm gonna slice it down even further because these are 2 players that could make Tennessee a different team if they suddenly emerge. What players that Josh Heupel cited after practice on Thursday will have the biggest impact in 2024? We'll put that on our YouTube.
Peyton Lewis or Dont'e Thornton.
Peyton Lewis or Dont'e Thornton. Those are your choices. What say you?
Peyton Lewis. Peyton Lewis would have a bigger impact. Peyton Lewis is... I keep saying this. Tennessee is in serious trouble if Peyton Lewis doesn't have an impact. And so I think the answer is very obviously Peyton Lewis because of that.
Okay. Well, are you picking with your mind or your heart?
With my mind. Tennessee doesn't have a feature back, so they need one. Peyton Lewis is crucial for them to be successful this year. So they have an issue if Peyton Lewis is not the guy. So I think because of that, Peyton Lewis more than anybody else is the guy they need him. And so I think they're going to try to make him work more than they're going to try to make Dont'e Thornton work. With Dont'e Thornton, it's one of those, if he doesn't work, we can go somewhere else. With Peyton Lewis, they're going to give him every excuse in the book to work out. And they're going to try everything to make sure he works out. They will ride or die for him as much as possible, the same way they will with Andre Carrick, because they desperately want them to work out, because they need them to work out.
Had Peyton Lewis started in the scrimmage and played more in the scrimmages, I would agree with you. But if I ask what players that Josh Heupel cited after practice on Thursday will have a bigger impact on the season, Peyton Lewis or Dont'e Thornton, I'm going Dont'e Thornton big time. I like Dont'e Thornton's athletic ability. We talked about that too much, so that's a given, right? But there was a reason given to me why he didn't have a great early first half of the season. And the reason was he put too much pressure on himself. That's a good reason. That's not, he showed up and he didn't have good practice habits and those sorts of things. I haven't heard anything like that. I've heard he was overwhelmed, and we've all been overwhelmed before. That's something that typically you overcome, whether it takes a couple hours at the gym or whether it takes a couple of days or whatever. I don't think he's going to feel overwhelmed this year. I think they're also going to find that he's more comfortable in outside receiver role than trying to force him in at the slot. So I think it's Dont'e Thornton. But I'll give you this. Seems as if our listeners and viewers agree with you, because he leads in our poll on YouTube. We want you to be a part of. If you're right and I'm wrong, then Tennessee has a much better season this year. If Peyton Lewis, I think Dont'e Thornton will accumulate somewhere along the lines of 400 or 500 yards. If Peyton Lewis gets in that realm, then he's going to go way beyond it. You're going to realize that he can handle pass pro and he's a good back, and put him in there and let's roll with it. That's what you're going to do. But I believe Dont'e Thornton at the end of the year will have more yards from scrimmage than Peyton Lewis.
I don't see that being possible. I mean, Dave, who would have Dave, think about this. Well, no, honestly. Okay. You think Brew McCoy is the number one receiver, right?
Yes.
You think Chris Bradswell's now officially the number 2 receiver, right?
I think the number 2 is pretty much always a slot in this offense.
Wait, no. The number 2 wideout. The number 2 wideout.
Okay.
The number 2 wideout.
I do.
You think Squirrel White is the starting slot guy, right?
Yes.
Where the heck is Dont'e Thornton going to be able to come in to get 400 or 500 yards?
Well, some of those may be in garbage time, because you know that Josh Heupel isn't afraid to score a few more points.
Yes, but the problem is he needs a backup quarterback who can deliver those yards in garbage time. And whatever you think of Joe Milton, he was at least able to do that 2 years ago. I don't think Gaston Moore or Jake Merklinger can.
May I give you the ultimate Achilles to my argument?
Sure.
Okay, it's brought to you by Work Trucks. Work Trucks, they're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standard to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle from Work Trucks, the utility body trucks with Napod work bodies, Work Trucks cargo vans. They've also got special things like cranes and dump trucks. And if you're a contractor, that's Work Trucks with an X .LLC, Work Trucks with an X LLC.com, Work Trucks with an X LLC.com. Proud supporter of the Tennessee Vols. They'll have you fit to a T. Work Trucks LLC.com, Work Trucks with an X LLC.com. Perfect trucks, save you time. If you're a contractor, no Work Trucks. The other thing that I'm going to predict, because you have a strong argument that you haven't used yet, and that is Josh Heupel doesn't rotate his wide receivers. He relies on 3 until the game gets out of hand. I think that you will see some more wide receiver play because they have players that can do that. They have more players. You mentioned Mike Matthews, the freshman. I think Nimrod's a better than advertised player. And I think Thornton can contribute. Plus, there will probably be an injury along the way. Now, I will say this. Nimrod's probably going to get the first crack if there's an injury over Thornton. So, again, I'm strengthening your argument. What do you call that? Iron Manning, or what do you call that?
Steel Manning?
Steel Manning. So I'm steel manning your argument. But I think there's going to be enough of an opportunity still in this passing game, and I believe there'll be too much uncertainty about Peyton Lewis's pass protection, and that's why you'll see Dont'e Thornton have a bigger impact on this offense than Peyton Lewis in 2024.
Okay.
Did I win any of that argument, or I just strengthened the argument?
You make a point, but I still think Peyton Lewis is going to lead the team in carries this year. At which point he would just naturally have more yards than Dont'e Thornton. Now, someone's asking, and because I know this can be confusing sometimes when I say feature back versus all-purpose back and getting the most yards. When I say feature back, because someone asked, what does Caleb mean by feature back? There's going to be an all-purpose back. That'll be Dylan Samson. He's going to be the flashy one that gets all the yards. He's going to get a ton. There's going to be a power back. There's going to be a power back in Khalifa Keith. A feature back is a person that just on an average down-to-down basis, you have this person in, and you don't know if they're going to take a handoff. You don't know if they're going to stay back to pass pro, or if they'll be dropping out in the flats. They kind of are your regular every down back. Dylan Samson is a specialty back. He's in on specifically designed plays. The same with Khalifa Keith. Tennessee's a feature back is not in on specialty design plays. A feature back is in down to down, oftentimes, regardless of what you're doing. I don't think Dylan Samson can carry that burden. I don't. He's too small. Or how about this?
Okay, but what about the fact, let me get your take on this, but what about the fact that when Josh Heupel went undefeated at Central Florida, his backs were about the same exact size? Answer that in 15 seconds.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
All right. Answered that, Caleb. His backs at Central Florida were about the same size. We discussed it earlier. I think you too easily dismissed that.
He was in the American Athletic Conference. The talent was way less. And two, I'll say this, I bet his backs played a little harder. I think Dylan Sampson's lazy. I think he doesn't want to pass block. And I don't care. And you know what? He can hate me all day for saying that. I watched the Iowa game last year. That was at the end of his sophomore year. This wasn't a freshman running back, guys. Okay, so 2 years ago, Dylan Sampson missed a block. Hendon Hooker got draxed on that and fumbled the ball. To Dylan Sampson's credit, he picked it up and made a play out of it. That was as a true freshman. This is the Iowa game, the end of his sophomore year. And he missed 3 blocks easily, got Nico Iamaleava killed. You don't do that at the end of your sophomore year. I've watched a lot of running backs over my time, Dave, and so have you. They figure things out by their sophomore year. Okay, this is the end of his sophomore year. You're not going to pick up pass pro at the end of your sophomore year if you haven't done it. At that point, you just don't care to do it. There's a reason, by the way, as a sophomore, we saw Dylan Sampson down the stretch. Best player on the team last year with the ball in his hands, right?
Yes.
Why did he not get more touches last year?
I think it's pass pro.
And was he a freshman?
Yes.
No, he wasn't. He was a sophomore.
No. Sorry, it wasn't.
Yeah, he already played. I'm sorry. Jamal Lewis, who I'm sure was thinking about his NFL future, picked up pass pro 4 weeks into the season. And they said that was a problem. Have you ever heard of a player not figuring it out by the end of their second year in a team?
I want to ask you this before we get to Hooker's Corner. I'm going to post this on our YouTube page. I do want to remind you that portions of the program brought to you by TriStar Hats. For the latest in TriStar Hats, go to the original TriStarHatsCo.com, TriStarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Caleb, the last poll question we had, what players that Josh Heupel cited after practice on Thursday will have a bigger impact? Dont'e Thornton, 54% of the vote. Peyton Lewis, 45% of the vote for the record. And then I'm going to change gears slightly on you, and that is size-wise. Are you worried about Dylan Sampson's size? So far, the majority are saying no, quicks matter. Yes, too small. I know how you feel about this, but I am of the mindset that this is the type of tailback in Dylan Sampson that Josh Heupel wants. Now, I'm not telling you they have a backup that Josh Heupel wants, but I think this is a tailback. If Jabari Small was back, who would be the starter, Dylan Sampson or Jabari Small?
I think Jabari Small. I do. I think Jabari Small.
Disagree. Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson.
Jalen Wright. He was there last year, and so was Dylan Sampson, and Jalen Wright started.
Well, but you do have to factor in. Now, I'm just telling you about kids. I've covered a lot of kids, and these are young men / kids. He came in thinking he was the third string tailback, and he was underclassman, and he knew he had time. He also knew that NFL scouts would be looking at his junior tape a lot more than his sophomore tape, and bowl games are fun. There is an opportunity that Dylan Sampson was a little bit immature because he was uber talented, and he didn't have the impact last year because of a trio of tailbacks and because he was a little immature. There is that possibility that he could take a major leap.
You were suggesting he was lazy last year on Pass Pro.
Not lazy.
That sounds lazy.
I mean,
that sounds like, why am I not going to try that hard for this? Because I'm not going to get the yards I want.
I never question effort unless another player tells me. And the reason is I believe uncertainty can look like a lack of effort. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't times where you can't see somebody completely dogging it, like running down the court on defense in basketball or something. I mean, there are times, but I'm more likely to give the benefit of the doubt in that situation.
Well, okay, but that's even a bigger red flag if there was uncertainty. Dylan Samson was a sophomore. That was the end of his second year last year when I was seeing him miss those blocks. You shouldn't have uncertainty issues. And pass pro is not this complex thing to pick up, guys. It's not for a running back. It's you identify the linebacker blitzing and you block him. That's what you do.
So
it's one of the easiest things to figure out.
Well, not easiest things to figure out.
It's one of the easier ones. We've always agreed running back more than any other position is probably the number one position where players can step in as true freshmen or as rookies in the NFL and star, right? Isn't that because there's not a lot of learning you have to do?
Yeah, but I don't think it's the easiest thing. I think you're exaggerating a little bit on that.